because there we go. All right, I'll say it again. All right. So, hi, first of all, my name is Andrea Joy. I am a longtime eclectic Wiccan. I've been on the journey for over 45 years. Today, I'm going to be talking about the art of creating spells. But if you're watching this, I don't want you to worry. There's going to be a lot of materials, and I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. So, in the chat, there is a link. And as long as you are comfortable, you can download from a Google Drive the presentation. It's both as a PDF and a PowerPoint and the worksheet that I'm going to be talking about. So, sit back and relax, and let's talk about spell jars. Now, as a long-time witch, I personally love spell jars. Why? Partly because they're just so easy to get the materials. Literally, all you need for a spell jar is a jar. And probably like the simplest spell jar is a jar and a piece of paper. And we're going to get more into that later. But I thought I would start out with just a tiniest bit of history. Now, what do you know? In 1681, people did not look at witchcraft in the way that we might today. And indeed, the first written recorded history of spell jars is in 1681. And there's a story here. The story goes that there was this woman and she was very sick. And her family, of course, was very concerned about her because it really looked like she was going to die. So they went to the wise old man that lived in their little town and they asked what to do. And at first, the things they tried just didn't work. But they kept going back because this person was known for being a wise old person, maybe even a witch, it was rumored. And that person told them it was their wife, so they told them to take the wife's urine and nails and pins and needles, put it in a jar and put a cork in it and bury it in the earth. So this is real old time spell jars. If you look at some of the spell jars, they're not these shiny things that you often see on the internet. They're full of things like nails and I mean nails from your hand and also nails you might put in a board. So a lot of them were pretty darn nasty, but sure enough, a few days later, she's fully recovered. And this might seem like a happy ending. I mean, what a great thing. They followed what was done, and she's perfectly well. But this is a small town, and she's walking around and talking to people. And she finds out through the rumor mill that what had actually happened is that there's now a new widow. And that widow's husband was a wizard who had put a curse on her and he died. So, what had actually happened is that the old man had put a curse, and that's why she was well. So, you can see in 1681, there was a lot of moral things about being careful, which I still think is a good thing when we're talking about spells, being careful about what we're doing. And I just thought that that was a great story to show the first time that we see a spell jar actually written down about. Okay, so now today, what I'm going to be going through, really important word here, guideline. This is going to look like a lot of steps, but this is a system I personally created and have had great success with and have had other people have great success with. And it can be used in two ways. One is for creating your own spell jars, and another is to look at existing spell jars. And we're going to go through this today. And just at a very high level, and these are arbitrary, the number of steps, and you may not even do each one of these. But we're going to plan our jar, we're going to cleanse our jar, we're going to make the jar. We might be adding to a jar. There's times when we want to do that. We may be wanting to seal a jar. Obviously, we're going to be adding something later. You don't want to seal it because at least, unless it's something like a cork that you can easily take off. You're going to bless the jar. You might even remove things. There are times when you remove things from spell jars. And then eventually you're either going to keep it until, you move or something, or you're going to get rid of it. And we're going to go through thinking about these and how we might approach creating our own jar. And for this example, I'm just talk about creating. Later in the presentation, I'm going to give some examples of common spell jars you find out on the web, and we're going to look at it in this way. So let's talk about planning our jar. In my opinion, if you do nothing else, this is the step you need to do. Even if you're buying something, you got to think about what you're trying to manifest. What am I trying to get at? And you really want to get it down to one word. And you'll see why later that's important. Yes, you want to know. And I'm of the opinion that, you know, the easiest magic to do is the one where it is more specific and it's easiest to change things because magic makes things more probable. So the little amount you can do, the better. And we're going to try for one word. So some examples are things like joy, love, prosperity, protection, binding. You can get the idea. You also want to give some thought to what you're going to put into it. And I'm going to go on a little tiny bit of tangent and talk about a methodology of magic that's very common across cultures, and that's sympathetic magic. Simply put, you might see this word out there and go, what the heck is that? Well, simply put, it's the idea that like creates like. So you'll see this a lot. You'll see, like, I do a picture of something in order to manifest this thing, or I do some action that is similar to what I want to create. And the reason I'm highlighting it is a lot of things that we do in magic and certainly in a spell jar uses this concept. So again, we were talking about, now that I've talked about that, I want to talk about how do we think about what we're going to put on it. Well, this is your magic. I'm not here to tell you how to do your magic. Every one of us is unique. We have a style. I'm a planner. I like to plan every darn little things. Some people are much more intuition. I'm a little bit of both. I've been doing witchcraft for 45 years. So absolutely, I will plan things. And then when I'm doing it, I go, oh, I just know this needs to be in there. So you can plan everything. You can have a general idea of things you want in your spell jar. And yes, you can use your intuition as you go along. And of course, the trade-off of using your intuition as you go along is your intuition may say, I need X, and you may not have X right by. So, everything has got its pluses and minuses. And of course, like I said at the beginning, you only need one thing for a spell jar, and that's you got to have a jar. Can you use a plastic jar? Yes. I'm personally not a fan. I don't think it has the same, in my opinion, it doesn't have the same energy. So I like the good old fashioned non-breakable, because safety is important, jars. So we're going to start with our jar, and we're going to think about the jar and what size do we want. And we're going to, if we start with a certain size jar, because we're doing things the way, that's going to limit how much stuff we put in it. If we're doing things by intuition and we pick a small jar, that's going to limit it. Or if we plan, then we know we'll have a lot of stuff, we might pick a bigger jar. So where can you get some of these jars? One of the reasons I love, love, love doing this kind of magic is there's a lot of places you can get these jars. It doesn't cost a lot if you want to buy them. You can even reuse it. So my personal trick, I like to use things like jam jars, like the kind of jam that you get. And then here is an old witch's thing you do. You use white vinegar to get off you have to scrub a bit, but you use white vinegar and it removes the label. Now I've got a perfectly great jar, and you can use spice jars or mason jars. Yes, you can even use a pickle jar, though that's really big, but there might be a reason you want to do that. And these slides are going to talk about that. I also want to encourage, especially if you're a seeker. Now, if you've been doing this a long time, you might not need to do this. But if you're a seeker, I think it may be difficult as a seeker to know what's working for me or not. So I'm a big fan of writing down what I did, why I did it, So I can look back later and say, oh, look, this really worked for me. This, not so much. That's going to help you determine much quicker what style works for you. Maybe you'll start out planning and those jars just don't work as well for you. And you start doing intuition, you find, wow, I'm getting much more success. If you didn't record it, maybe you won't remember. So one of the bonus things you get for watching this is there is a handout that has a suggested way for recording that. And I just want to mention that that's out there. Okay, so we have planned the jar. Next thing we want to do is to cleanse the jar. And yes, of course, we want to make sure the jar is not, at least I don't want to have a jar that's sticky in my house. But here we're really talking about removing unhelpful energy. At least for me, I want to keep the helpful energy. If I had a jar that I bought from a witchy friend that I know, really loves me, I don't want to get rid of that energy. I want to keep it because I like to do as little work as I can while understanding that the stuff does take effort. There are a lot of ways you can cleanse it. I'm going to talk a lot about things from my own tradition. Now, I'm eclectic, so I've got a little bit of everything. But at least in Wicca, one of the most common ways we cleanse things is a mixture of salt and water. And I like this for jars because you can do salt and water and just sprinkle a little bit on your jar. You, of course, can use smoke from incense. And again, I talked about seeing that unhelpful. You can, if you're good at visualization, this is something I do, you can see the energy flowing into the earth, knowing that Mama Earth knows how to take that energy and she ain't going to get hurt by it. So you can do it no problems. Or if you're more advanced, I think this is something better to be done once you've had lots of experience. You can actually change the unhelpful energy. I've done this. You can take the unhelpful energy, but this is something more advanced. At least I would recommend that you have more confidence in your magic before you try changing energy around. So we're going to make our jar. And again, arbitrary system, we're going to think about it in 3 different parts. And a lot of this is logical, and there might be reasons you're going to do things differently. I'm going to talk about the base having heavy objects, but there might be good reasons you're going to put the heavy objects on top. So again, guideline. Seriously important word here. This is a guideline. But for the most part, you're going to find that this works really well. You have a base where you have your heavy things. And a lot of this is logical. Well, what kind of heavy things am I talking about? Rocks, crystals, tiles, ceramic tiles, bones, things that might crush things. We're going to have the center part. And that is going to have what I'm calling our working or medium weight things, herbs, plants, flowers, petals, something you're mixing in with the other stuff because you're charging it. And then on top, you're going to have something that you might be adding over to on time. Or, like I said, the easiest spell jar is a spell jar with a piece of paper with your intentions. You can make a spell jar just with that. You really can. I'm personally of the school of thought that says the more important something is, the more work I'm personally going to put into it. So personally, that's how I do it. Your mileage may, of course, vary, but we may be adding things such as coins or more paper. Sometimes we're doing a spell and we're doing paper, but we want to add to that spell as we're going along. And these are all things, and you can see this is about getting you to think about how to do your own. So I talked about optionally adding to a jar. Why might we do that? Well, probably the best example that's the easiest one to think about is we're doing a prosperity spell. This is a case where adding something to the jar really makes a lot of sense. And it's not unusual in a lot of cultures for that to be coins. And really, pennies, if you're in China, those cool coins that have the hole in them. But in some other, if it's your culture or it's an open culture that allows you to do this, you might, for example, use in China, they make things that look origami out of paper that look like cool things, and you might be adding those. So we might be adding more spices to get specific energy. Lots of things you could add. Here's something that I don't see as much. You're certainly not, because I've never seen this commercially. If somebody has, that's great. I have not. And that's adding something to the jar to soak up the energy so you can wear it later. That is something I think is great, because one of the things about a spell jar, one of the reasons we use it, is I like to think of it as like a little pocket dimension. Once we've done its spell, it's concentrating all that wonderful energy and keeping it in the jar. Well, as long as I've been careful about what I'm putting in my jar, who says that we can't take something out, wear it when we need it, cleanse it, and put it back in? I certainly think you can. Now, again, I told you these are guidelines, so I'm cheating a little bit with this slide. I say optionally seal, but really this is talking about the outside of the jar. So we put things inside the jar. We might also decide we need things on the outside of the jar. Well, what kind of things? Markings. I'm a modern witch and I see no reason to not use modern things. But if you're not comfortable doing that, that's okay. You could use a grease pen to write on your jar. Personally, what I like to do is take, if you've ever seen the computer paper that you make labels out of, they make whole sheets of that stuff. One of my favorite tricks is to use that, and then you can cut it in any shape, you can draw on it, you can make sigils, you get the idea. I love it because it's so easy to use. And those markings could be a sigil, they could just be a word. You can label it. You can say, what the jar is for. And you could do both. And then we're going to optionally, we might seal it. And why do we seal it? Again, remember I told you it becomes like this little pocket dimension. And the act of sealing it is a way to reinforce the idea that for right now, this is kind of percolating or done. And so we're sealing and we're containing everything that's in there. And whether that is whether it's being done for helpful magic or because feel we need to protect ourselves, it's the same concept. And you can leave. Now, again, I said practical things. If you're going to be taking something out, you probably don't want to seal it with something like candle wax because it's going to get really hard to get that candle wax. Plus, I don't think it's good. Remember, we talked about sympathetic magic. And I think by the time you break the seal of candle wax, you've really you're not sending the right signals to the universe or yourself. Here's something advanced you might do. You might actually put something on top of that lid, like a little piece of mirror. So there's a lot of, one of the things, again, I love about spell jars is they're so crafty and creative. So you get to work as a full witch and do a craft that's also a magical thing. And that is lovely. So I know a lot of people have heard that it's intent, intent, intent. And yes, can we do magic with just our intent? Absolutely. Personally, I'd rather have tools. We have tools to make our lives easier. Plus, things work better when we have physical objects. If all witches had to do was sit around and doing intents, just, thinking about things, yes, can they manifest it that way? Yes, but it's a whole lot more work in my experience. In my experience, having a physical thing just makes my life easier and makes my magic stronger. So I'm going to do both. I'm an all of the above. So give me that physical jar and give me a tent. So we might have been blessing things as we go. If I personally remember, I said in my case, I put in a lot of effort into something if I think it's really important. Let's say, for example, a friend of mine is going in and they've got really bad cancer. And they've asked me to do a working. I'm going to spend a whole lot of time on that. I'm going to bless every damn object that go into this jar. And then I'm going to bless the jar. But let's say I'm doing something that's a little bit, not as serious. Let's say I would just like to get $20 because I want to go out to the movies. That's not as important. So personally, I'm not going to bother blessing everything. I'm going to put my ingredients in. If nothing else, I'm blessing the jar. Blessing the jar is when all that stuff is coalescing into what we're trying to create. And again, there are typical ways of doing it. I'm going to talk about my specific eclectic Wiccan tradition. There are other correspondences in other traditions for what the moon means. I personally don't believe I don't believe the symbols are right or wrong. I personally believe they are cultural, and I personally believe you work with a system and that allows your brain to trigger certain things. I believe that that's how it works. But in my tradition, we use the waxing moon, and that's when the moon's getting bigger, for growth. We use the full moon for completion. We use, and it's also considered the strongest time to do any magic in my tradition. The waning moon, that's when it's getting less, for gentle removal. The new moon is interesting. There's a lot of different opinions about the dark moon, uh, or if you look at your calendar, the new moon. And some people say don't do magic at all. Some say just do baneful magic. I was taught that you could also do quick but not gentle removal, because there's no light being reflected to you. Yes, the moon's still there, but there's no light. And if you need to do, I consider this kind of like the nuclear. I really need to remove this, damn it, and it's going to go now. So I'm going to use that energy. You can get fancy and you can use astrology. And by astrology, most of us were talking about Western astrology that goes back to Babylon. But if you were very familiar with it, this could, of course, be Chinese astrology or even Vedic. If you're lucky enough to know somebody and grew up in India, you have an amazingly rich system. Go ahead and use it. To me, the astrology, that's the timing of using all that stuff. You can get fancy. The simplest way to bless something, hold it in your hands and send it energy while seeing in your mind what you want to happen. That is really, or if you can't visualize in your mind because you just can't, there's other things you can do, but you will learn to draw that energy and send it to what you want for what it's going to do. You can chant. I love chants personally. I personally find they work well. I'm never going to do this, but I'm going to assume that people out there are probably more coordinated than me. You can carefully dance with it. I'm never doing this because I'm dropping that thing and never finding it again. You can call on spirits and deities to help. I'm of the school of thought that says that I'm not going to personally do that unless I have already got a working relationship with them. I could drum or play music. There's so many ways you can bless something. And what I love about this is no matter what your witchcraft, is, you can do this. Even if you are, an atheist, you can see the psychological parts of this and just use that. And if you're a believer, you can use that. So I love this with the spell jars. Let's see. We're going to go ahead and make sure. Okay, so we got to bless the jar. Okay, so we have created our jar. We've done a whole lot of steps. Again, you're going to have this handout. So you get just to relax and go along for the ride. And we're going to optionally, now remember I talked about optionally removing things. So maybe when I was doing that center part, I put in herbs, and I'm going to do an example here because I think it's more useful. One of the best examples I like for this is, let's say I wanted to do something for self-love. When I was doing my jar, I might have done things like pink rose petals, because pink, there's a whole language of flowers. You can look it up. There's a whole association of colors. There's so many different tools in our toolboxes, and use the tool that works for you. But one of the things, in a lot of, especially in Western, that pink is more gentle love. It's a different kind of love than red, which is considered that kind of passionate, oh, I must have them now kind of love. So I would personally put pink rose petals in there and rose quartz, because again, that's considered love. And I would find a rose quartz. You can see here I have an example of one that looks like a heart. I might have put it in my spell jar in those petals and charged it and just put the top on. and done it for a while. And then when I feel I need, because I'm just feeling like I need a little bit more self love, I could take it out and wear it and get that energy because I've charged, I made it like a little battery and now I'm taking it out. And yes, you can clean it and put it back in. A lot depends what you're using in the jar. You might have to add some more, petals in it, and if it's wet or dry. I mean, obviously, if it's wet, it may not last as long because it's going to start to rot. That's what natural things do. We work with natural things, especially as witches, we tend to like to go out and use herbs and stuff. So, another thing I might be doing to removing is I might be removing to lessen the effect of something. So, for example, maybe I put small chains in because I feel like I'm bound to some situation. But I want it to be a more gentle separation for whatever reason. I might, over time, in my case, I would probably doing it during the waning moon, remove those chains. Or again, here's a great example of sympathetic magic. I'm trying to lose weight and I put in little stones to represent that's the weight I'd like to come off. Well, usually we don't. Usually losing weight really, really, really suddenly is for bad health reasons. And I personally would like to lose the weight more healthy. So I'm going to remove those stones to help with my weight loss journey. So those are just some examples of why we might remove something. So now you've probably thought it beforehand, whether you're going to keep it or dispose of it. In general, we like to keep things that are going to help us. And if I'm doing magic because I need to protect somebody, I may not want to keep that in my house. Personally, I don't want to keep something in my house that I'm doing because it's a binding or if I really feel I need to. By the way, as witches, yes, we are allowed to protect ourselves. Let me make that clear. We don't want to be, personally, I follow the rule that we don't want to be assholes. But if somebody is doing something really nasty, we absolutely have a right to protect ourselves. So in that case, if I'm doing something like that, I don't want to keep that in the house. So how long do I keep it? As long as it makes sense. And what I mean by that is I'm going to just go by my intuition. I'm going to keep it till I feel it's done. That's how I'm going to do it. Or maybe I have a preset time. So makes sense here depends on who you are and why you're using your jar. So now, how might we get rid of this jar? We're done with it. If you own your own property, you might consider burying it, especially if it's helpful. Magic. I'd like to do this. And I don't put anything in the jar that's going to eventually hurt, the soil. But I might bury, if I did a healing jar or protection, especially a protection jar, burying it around my house. I now have warding out in my yard. So I get some extra use out of that spell jar. I'm an animist, and for me, it's super important to thank the items. So that's something I'm going to do. And it's something you might do. You might thank the items that have served you and give them back to the earth. Yes, you can throw away the jar. Yes, you can. If it's something that is not good, you might do something else. You can consider reusing the jar. This is something my coven and I like to do. We did healing magic in it. We're done. We take out the herbs. We thank them. We give them back to the earth. We give them back to the goddess and God and spirit. And we reuse the jar because then the jar is already got that energy. And it kind of acts as a little battery for our next time. It's kind of like, I love cheats. I've done some work. Why not get some benefit out of it? If I don't want the energy, remember I talked about there's times we don't want to keep it. First of all, I don't touch the thing. Yes, if you touch it, it's not like you're going to die. You can take a shower, you can cleanse yourself. But I like to make my witchcraft a little bit easier. So I personally am not going to touch it. You can take a rag. I mean, you can go old school and get black silk, or you can just get a rag. Just don't touch it. You could still thank the items. Just because you used it for a purpose, to protect yourself does not mean you shouldn't, in my mind, throw it. You throw it away, but here, if we're throwing it away, I don't want to throw away at my house. So I might take this far away. If it's something serious enough, I might try to put this someplace where I don't think people will go or animals go. So I might even drive to a forest and, go out, away from people because I know that there might, let's say, as a trash can and put it in there because I know hardly anybody is going to go by it. But that's a personal preference. So again, everything here is things for you to think about. It's your magic. So I've gone through a lot of stuff, and I always think that an example helps you see how to use any method. So I'm going to do something based on a workshop I just did. And we're going to do something to bring more joy into our lives. So we're going to create a joy spell jar. And in this case, again, we have different ways we could do it, but this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to cleanse it using something joyful. There's this wonderful thing called crystal sand. You know about crystals. Well, it turns out that when you do crystals, in order to get those lovely shades, there's parts and it becomes like sand. So you can use that in your bottom. One of my favorite things, one of my favorite witchy tools, spices and dried plants. Why? Because you can go into any store and buy spices. If you're old school, you might actually have grown these yourself. That's great. But there's nothing wrong with going in even to a low-cost store and getting this stuff. You don't have to go broke to be a witch. I'm going to add a sigil on the outside. I'm going to seal it with yellow candle wax. I'm going to bless it by calling on a deity. I'm going to do a little chant. I'm going to keep it where it's seen because it's joy and I want to be reminded and I want to feel that energy and I want to get that little boost. And then eventually, when I feel that it's done its job, I'm going to thank the items, leave them on the ground, give them back to the earth, and reuse the jar. Now, I'm going to pretty much select, because I've been doing this for 45 years, I got a lot of stuff at home. And because I have a lot of stuff, I'm going to just select items as I go along. Your adventure in making your specific witchy jar might be different. You might be buying this beforehand, depending on where you are in your journey. So again, we're going to be putting something, we're going to basically bring more joy into our life. So I'm going to cleanse it using something joyful. In this example, I'm using lemon juice and water. Why lemon juice? Well, first of all, lemon juice reminds me of lemonade in the summer. I'm going to sprinkle it outside the jar. Lemon is also associated with the sun. So that's another thing. It's acidic. So on this level, we often use lemon juice for cleaning. You find it in a lot of cleaning products. So we're going to use it to basically gonna take a lemon or maybe just that lemon juice you buy in a jar, and I'm going to put it with some water and I'm going to just sprinkle it on my lovely little, in this case, let's say I use that jam jar that I was talking about and took off that label. And I'm going to see unhelpful energy just dissolve and turn into a yellow mist. So I'm doing something a little bit more advanced. I'm going to turn it into helpful energy. If I was a little bit more, when I was starting my journey over 5 years ago, I would have been seeing this go into the earth. So we're making our jar. We're going to start at the base. And what we use in the base, again, in this case, I'm going to stick to it and I'm going to stick with things that are heavy. There are a lot of systems you could use. In this particular case, I've decided to use color. And specifically, I'm using Western occult associations of color. Different cultures have different association. If you have a different culture, you can go for that. I love working with crystals, so why not combine them? And these are just some examples that I got that show you traditional Western association of crystals that kind of go with that word joy. Remember I told you to get one word? Then here's why. That way you can go and look up in a book or some other reliable source things that are associated with that. And you can see here that you can, the kind of associations. In my particular case, I just happen to have tiger eye sand. And yellow is associated with the sun and joy. To me, I think this is perfect. Tiger eye is associated with dopamine, that thing that makes us happy, and a can do attitude. I think that is perfect for my joy jar. That's what I'm going to use. You could choose something else. And we're going to go to the next one. All right. So I've done, whoops, I've gotten, it wants to slip ahead. So we're going to go back. We're witches. We're going to rewind time. So now we've done that base. And I might put more. I'm just making this a simple example. And we're going to do our working. And I thought about this ahead of time. And because I'm doing a joy jar, I want to have it a long time. So I want to use things that are dried and pleasant, because if I use wet plants, they're going to start to, smell funky and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I want to keep this for a long time. So I'm going to purposely use dried plants, and I'm going to use spices. And remember last time we chose by color? Well, here I decided I'm going to work with the Western elementals. And in the occult Western, without going into the whole thing, because that's a whole other course, you can look it up, we talk about 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. And I'm not going to go in what they mean. That is something you can look on your own. But I happen to know that for this, I want to work with fire. Because in my case, what's going on in my own life, this is JoJo for me, is I've just been feeling like I have absolutely no energy. I've been really tired. And I need some passion to get me going. So I'm going to choose star anise, which is associated with fire. It's associated with happiness. You can see how all these things are saying joy in some word. So happiness is close enough to joy that that's why we came up with that one word at the beginning. Joy, happiness, close enough, really. At least close enough for me. You might need it more close, and that's okay. And I'm going to put star, so I put on the base thyroid, and I'm putting star anise. It's the next layer in that working area. I probably would put more, but we're keeping it simple just because I want this example to make some sense. Now we're going to look at our top. And in this case, again, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to use a yellow piece of paper. Again, yellow, joy, all that good stuff. And we're just going to write on it. Now, I could get out my witch's runes and write certainly using that alphabet. Or I could do it in some other way. I'm just going to keep it simple. Write in English, joy be mine. This is a joy jar. I want to make it a little bit simpler. So we're just going to write joy be mine. And it's that simple piece of paper. Boom, it goes in. And that is it. I might add something else like, a lucky coin. Who knows? A lot of this depends on, at least for me, because I've been doing this so long, usually have some ideas of what I put in. And then sometimes my instructor will say, you must put this in. And I go, okay, if that's what you want. And I can always say, oh, that's why you want that. Okay, great, fine. So, I do a bit of both. All right, so now we have done things, we've put everything in that jar. Yay. So that was, and we've had a lot of fun because I love doing these personally. And now we come to those markings. I told you I was being a little bit on that step, taking it a little bit shortcuts because, 8 steps seemed like enough. But really now when we're talking about sealing, we're talking about that outside. And to me, the markings is kind of a seal. So we might, and why do we want to do this again? We want to emphasize, and also maybe I just want to remember what the heck this is. If you're like me, you have a lot of these jars, and maybe you don't remember why you made that one. So there is a practical reason. And in this case, I'm just going to write joy jar on the label. I might even use my computer because I'm a modern witch. And why not? Why not find something that says joy jar, print it out on a computer, and we're going to add our energy to that. But I could write it also, certainly. Or I could, again, in my case, I'm keeping it simple. And that's going to go on the outside of my jar. And finally, I'm gonna seal it. So we've done a lot of stuff to get to this point, and by sealing it, we're saying, okay, I am at a point, and in my case, I am sealing it shut. I'm not gonna take anything out of this. I'm done enough. Once I bless it, it can sit there. So how am I going to seal it? I'm going to use yellow candle wax. I think it's important to remember our ancestors did not have access to colored candles. They just didn't. Everything was kind of this off white. But I see no reason in not using what we have available. And for a lot of modern Wiccans and witches, we use colored candles. So I'm going to seal it with yellow because yellow joy. You've heard that now a lot. If you know, I bet everybody at least knows that one thing by the end of this. And if you only take one thing away, I want you to take away that thinking about what you want for your jar and getting one word, because that's going to do so much for your jars and creating them. So we've now put our whole jar together and we're going to bless them. And we're bringing more joy into our life. So in my particular case, I work with very respectfully with these beings called the Orisha. Now, I have an expert friend who's told me that as long as I'm not stealing, Ifa is a closed practice, but that working with the Orisha, almost everybody in South Africa actually works with the Orisha. It's very common in South Africa, which is where the Yoruba thing comes from. Even if you're not an Ifa initiate, you do it. What you can't do is use their practices, but you can call on the Orisha if you formed if you formed a relationship with them. And I have been working with this being for a long time. The name of this wonderful being is Ishu. It's a trickster. It opens up portals. You give it first. It's kind of a liminal being. You give it stuff, and it's going to help you connect with the rest of the Orisha. It's also known for joy. So I've worked with it a lot of time. It likes candy. So I'm going to give it candy before I even call on it. A lot of my personal practice is basically being reciprocal. Before I ask something, I don't see them as vending machines. And by the way, bonus, if you're an atheist, there is actually good research that shows that using physical objects, they've been able to study in science that using physical objects in any ritual does actually work. It makes you happier. You can go look at that. You can find the science papers. But I'm going to give this, and I'm just going to use a little simple chant. I love chanting. Personally, it helps me get into that place where I can turn off this thinking brain, which in my case always wants to be thinking, and get to that place where I want to be in my magic. So I'm just going to sit there and do joy I see, joy I feel, joy is my birthright, joy I see. And I'm going to be happy about it. And I'm going to do that. And I'm going to basically bless it. And I'm going to put energy and very carefully I might just do that chant and I personally draw the energy and put it towards it while I ask Ishu to help with this process. So that's what I'm going to do. So we have blessed it. And then do I keep it or dispose it? I already kind of gave away that. I'm going to keep it. Why? Because it's a joy jar. And personally, I want to, have it where I can see it. So I'm going to put it in a place where I see it every day. And as I walk by, I'm going to get some of that energy. I'm going to see it and remind me of it. When I'm finally done, and when am I done? When I'm feeling happier. In my case, I decided, remember back in the beginning, I decided I'm going to be done when I'm starting to feel better. Because that's why I made a joy jar. I was feeling really bad. And I needed something to help me break through. So I made my spell jar. So when I'm done, I'm going to take out the stuff. I'm going to thank it, give it to the earth. I'm going to cleanse that jar and put it away. If it's me, I'd probably leave the thing that says joy jar so I remember what it was for, so I can reuse it later. That's what I'm going to do. I hope your spell jars, you do things differently or the same. It's your jar, it's your spell jar, not mine. So you have to figure out what works. So I have gone through a method, and I know there's been a lot here. That's why you have the link. You can go and get all the stuff. You don't have to worry about memorizing anything. It's all there for you. And the worksheet kind of goes through writing down, if you want, why you're doing things so that you can look back later. So we're going to go through some. I took every example we're about to see from the internet. I did an internet search. These are the most popular spell jars people make for love, and I'm going to choose self love, protection, prosperity, healing, happiness, friendship, and for peace. And we'll go into this a little bit each way. And this is a great place of where we might see how we might use this to evaluate something we find out there, or if we're buying something. Let's say we have a witchy store we really trust and we're buying that spell jar. Now we have a way of looking at to see if it doesn't work for us. And we're just going to pretty much use, the part where we're dividing it into three. So we're not using the whole method right here, though you certainly could in using these jars if they didn't have. A lot of times when you go on the internet, they just tell you what to put in it. They don't tell you all the steps. So now you have some of the steps. But let's just say for the fun of it, I'm buying every single one of these jars. They're already made. So this is a self-love jar. So notice that this jar, we can kind of see the base. And notice that here in the base, we have Himalaya salt and rose crystal. So why? Rose crystal, remember I told you, heartstone, unconditional love. Himalaya salt, it's a soft pink color. It's associated with emotional healing. I'm liking this already. The working layer, that middle layer, has lavender, which is love and attraction. Rosemary, which is associated with the deity Venus, which is well known for love, and rose petals. Personally, I would use pink rose petals. It doesn't say that because it has to do more with self-love. And here we didn't do anything at top. Remember, I told you that everything in my system is optional, except you got to have something in the jar when you're done. A blank jar doesn't work for me. You got to at least have a piece of paper in there. So in this case, they didn't put anything. That's fine. All right. So now we're going to do another example, and that's protection. And again, and I'm going to rattle through these quickly because you're going to get the idea pretty quickly by seeing this. The base. And in this case, you can see that they're using crystal salt. Why? It's purification. Why crystal? Why not table salt? At least I'd ask that. Maybe you're one of those people, and I envy you if you are, that can just take it and use it. I have to analyze everything to death. So in my case, crystal salt is more concentrated. It's heavier. So we're doing purification, and the fact that it's a crystal for me means it's more concentrated than, say, table salt. In the working layer, we have, again, now we have a different kind now we have salt, purification. Star anise, remember that's fire, it's happiness. Lavender, which is calming and purifying. Juniper, which is fire and purification. Sage is protection. Acorns is associated with emotions and good luck. Our top is going to have a silver chain around it, which has to do with the astral plane and the subconscious mind. We're putting a mirror on top, which is classic sympathetic magic. It's reflecting back. This is protection. We want to reflect back anything that we don't want. And finally, we're putting a candle on top. I would personally, while I was there, I never leave a candle on alone. I've had fire adventures. Don't do what I did. Do not go having to get the fire extinguisher, please. I've done it for you. So never leave your candles unattended. And in this case, I might be tempted to actually light it if I need a little bit more protection. I'm not going to tell you whether I think these are good or bad. I'm leaving that for you. I'm giving you a way of evaluating it. You might say, for me, I just don't get how the heck the happiness comes in. So maybe you would leave it out if you were making this rather than, buying it. So this is why I wanted to give you the method. You now have a way to take something and make it work for you or not. So now here's another common one, and that's a prosperity spell. And on the base, I'm going to mispronounce things. I'm dyslexic, so don't learn to pronounce things for me. Just read the screen when I say things. We're going to have pyrite, which is abundance, and aventurine, which is new opportunities. The middle layer is our working area. We have basil for good luck. We have cinnamon. I bet a lot of people here know about throwing cinnamon out their front door. Now you might know why. It's fire, energy, and success. We want to bring that in. We're going to have mint, one of my personal things for prosperity, because it literally is associated. It's green. It smells wonderful. It's associated with prosperity. The top, we're going to add some coins. I've already talked about that. Now, I didn't talk about how I cleansed it beforehand, but I'm going to talk about it now. In this case, and you can see on the screen, they've told you to pre-do it with rosemary. Rosemary is absolutely considered a cleansing herb. It's pretty classic. So this one, they're doing some classic things. I'm going to give a second just to take a deep breath. A lot of information here, so go ahead and just breathe a little bit and relax. Getting to healing. So I know a lot of my practice, personal practice, is people asking me to do spells for them for healing or prosperity. So I do a lot of healing jars. I've done a lot in my life. So this is one, again, I found on the web. In this case, if we look at its base, you can see that it's got Himalayan sea salt, which is, remember, is a soft pink color for emotional healing. It's got a rose quartz, which is a heartstone for unconditional love. In my particular case, I would think about this one before, if I were buying it. If I was making it myself, I would personally make choices. For me personally, I would want to be either something that's more about love, or like the bloodstone, which the Roman soldiers would carry, because sympathetic magic, slowing bleeding. To me, personally, if it works for you, great. For me, it wouldn't. And again, that this is about knowing ourselves, and this method helps you get to know yourself. I know for me, I would not want the bloodstone if I was doing something for emotional healing. If you do, there's nothing wrong with that. You're a different person. You're not me. The second part, we're talking about the working, and we're going to do an echinacea, which is physical and emotional healing. Lavender, one of my absolute favorites. It's calming and purifying. It's so calming and purifying. There are scientific studies that show you that it's calming and purifying. I mean, really, that's for any science geeks out there. You can smell lavender. If you're not allergic to it, it really is calming. Calendula, I know I'm pronouncing that wrong. That's soothing properties, especially for emotional. Rosemary for purification. Another one I'll probably pronounce wrong. Turmeric or turmeric. That's the stuff you get in the Indian stuff. That's that nice yellow stuff. It's connected to the sun. It's got that beautiful, it tastes wonderful, and it's got that beautiful yellow color. And it is connected to the sun. It enhances energy. How are we going to seal it? We're going to actually, this is, I think, clever. They're using a healing charm. Well, what is that healing charm? It's probably a ribbon with some kind of healing charm on it. I actually love this idea. I never had even thought about this till I saw this on the web. So even after 45 years, I'm getting new ideas. And we're going to seal the thing using green candle wax, which is regrowth. So again, for me personally, I would be choosing from these to have more of a standardized theme. Maybe it works for you, and that's great. After a while, if you do them enough and you keep track, you'll know, and you'll just start to see what's working for you. So now we're talking about another common thing, and that's a friendship jar. Well, in this case, and by the way, when I can, I'm big into giving credit to people. All the ones you saw when they didn't have anybody I could give credit to, they were all anonymous. But when I can, I'm big into giving it. So it's right there. So when you get these slides, if you want to go check out these people, you now have something about them when they gave something for you to do it. So in this case, there is no base. So again, they're optional. This one didn't do a base. It didn't do a top. Everything's working. Pomegranate seeds. This one's really interesting because they don't tell you why. I'm giving you systems I know because I've done lots of studying in my life. I'm eclectic. I've studied a whole bunch of different religions, a whole bunch of different traditions. So from a pagan perspective, we would probably think of Persephone and the promise of her coming back. Even though she goes in the underworld, it's promised that she will return. So we're going to do that. And that promise, and we're talking about a friendship, you can think of that as a promise. But there's also a meaning in Islam, and that in pomegranate in Islam tradition, the idea is that pomegranates are associated with paradise. So I can see, maybe if that's something I'm comfortable with, because that's my heritage, or because of whatever, reason, I would might use it that way. Uh, Tangerine peels are for joy and innocence. Dried apple for love and prosperity. This person is doing something I personally wouldn't do. And they're mixing different cultures. I personally don't like doing that unless I know they played really well together when they were all together, at the time. But, uh, everyone's different. And just because that works for me, you might find it works great. Uh, Bamboo in Buddhism is associated with peace and openness. In Chinese, and by Chinese, I'm being, talking Chinese, it's resilience. So Confucianism, that kind of thing. The passion flower is really interesting. If somebody works with the Orisha, it is actually associated with Oshun, uh, and that is associated with love. If now this is one that might be problematic for a lot of people, but might be perfectly fine if you're a Christian witch. And that is that the passion flower is associated with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. So notice I put there, are you okay with this? Not the question is Andrea okay with it? The other question is, are you okay with it? Now, if you're doing a spell, if you're doing these jars as part of a group, the group has to be okay with it. Nothing messes up something worse than somebody not being okay with something you're doing as a group. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work as humans because there's going to be tension. And it certainly doesn't work in magic because if I'm not comfortable and we're working together as a group, it's not going to work well. So, sage advice, if you're working a group, discuss beforehand, or as a group, just if you're working together a long time, you're going to be comfortable enough, it will work out. Okay, we're getting close here. This is the last example, and then we're going to have time for questions, comments, ideas, all that stuff. And we're talking about the last example, which is peace. And in this case, we're doing a spell for peace in my home. I want to bring in, I always want my home to have as much peace as possible. It is my sanctuary. So in this case, again, we're going to look in it in 3 levels. The base is got sea salt for purification. Tiger eye, remember? Dopamine and can-do attitude. And you know something? It's my house. If I want some hanky-panky, you don't get to say anything. So I'm definitely putting in some of that carnelian and light up my love life. Not your thing? I'm okay with that. I'm doing that. So we got all that in there. In the middle, we got the working part. And that is, we're going to put in, I'm going to use white rose petals. Again, the language of flowers. White is associated with more purity. So for me, I might have used a different color. Maybe I would have used blue because it's calm. But I used white for peace. Think of the white dove. Rosemary, purification. You've seen that before. Calendula, and if I pronounce it wrong, please maybe somebody else afterwards will say how it's right. And that's for soothing properties, especially emotional. And I think I love this. This is just using a cork. So there's another thing you can do. You can do a mason jar. You can do, you can do a spice jar that has top. You can do something with a cork. The nice thing about a cork is you can put a symbol in the cork. So we're going to do something that's from our culture. I personally believe that given enough time, a symbol gets power. If nothing else, we think about it. I see that symbol, I think of that, and I go into that state. So in our culture, the peace symbol is peace. It's been around our culture for a long time. I see that, I think peace in my home. I think that is really clever. I really do. So that is some examples. I'm going to take this down, and I don't know what we're doing on time, but it looks like we're doing pretty darn good. Oh, look at me. We're at 6:45. So time for just a little few. If people want questions, I'm happy to say if people have to leave. I'm going to turn it back to our lovely host.
Thank you, Andrea. Go ahead and stop sharing your screen.
I will try to do that. Now comes the part where we notice that I have eyesight problems. There we go. Okay, let's see. Share.
No worries.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Let's see. Hopefully this will work. If not, just keep talking because, by the time I find it.
I got it.
Or maybe you can do it because that's the problem about being in IT for 20 something